On today's walk, going to be talking about auto dismissing of things on the page. This is something that comes up in the context of like toast components or flag components, where you may want a message which you sort of want to automatically hide after a while because you don't want to have to force the user to come and close or interact with this thing. I mean, at the outset, auto dismissal of pieces of the UI, it's both a good thing and a bad thing. It's good that the user doesn't have to engage with it directly to get rid of it. But at the same time, I've been in a position where I was, say, reading something and it just disappears. And I'm like, oh no, like that was important. I needed to know what that said. How do I get that information? Or it may have been like, hey, you deleted your account. Press this undo button. And you're like, oh yeah, I should. I didn't mean to do that. I should click the undo button. And you're on the way to the undo button and it's just gone. And you're like, what do I do? Like, I'm in trouble. I've lost that thing. So, and you can think about from an accessibility perspective, that can get even more crazy because like you're effectively having a piece of information in the DOM that will automatically get destroyed after a certain time, which if you struggle to move a pointer or you're using some sort of assistive technology, having things auto dismiss is super problematic. So yeah, it's kind of one of those interesting patterns which exists but is problematic. There are ways to solve it. You might use a different mechanism as well for messaging to the screen reader versus showing it in a flag is one thing off the top of my head. Honestly, I haven't looked heaps into the accessibility side of it, so I'm not going to talk about it too much because I don't want to talk about stuff I don't really know. But I'm confident there would be a way. There are ways to send messages to screen readers, and so I'm confident you could do it in a way that didn't mean that assistive technology would be kind of messed up. But outside of assistive technology, like if you're just using like keyboard and mouse, having something disappear is tough. So what do you do? I have thought about having apps where basically every message that goes to a toast, you could access again through some other mechanism. Like imagine if your app had some sort of activity log built in and it showed these messages, which you could go back to at any time. I've thought about that as well in the context of undo and redo. You're making these actions in your application that a user could undo with Control Z and potentially like redo with Control Y. And maybe that kind of fits in to this somewhere. Like I have to think about that and chew on that more. It's hard because some operations can be reversed and some maybe not. And so what does that mean in terms of a activity log where you want to be able to undo stuff? Should you try and make it so that every action has a corresponding undo action? If you show an activity log which had undo buttons in it, what would happen if a user went to something older that had let's say you had a message that had an undo button in there and they click something like in that activity log, it has an undo button, like you click undo, like you probably don't want that undo button to be active anymore because all these other changes have now been stacked on top of that previous change. So yeah, that's really interesting. It's interesting because it kind of, I guess, thinking about this auto dismissal behavior, like should there be some way for users to be able to see them after it's dismissed? I'm thinking the answer is yes, but I don't really know what that looks like well in the details. But let's assume that you do have auto dismissal. How do we handle that well? Something I've been thinking about is I want there to be as little surprises as possible for a user when they're using my applications. And so a pattern I've been thinking about is for anything that can auto dismiss, having some sort of indication that this thing will auto dismiss and how long it has left until it will auto dismiss, as opposed to it just sort of being there and then it animating out and it's gone. Is there some way we can give a visual cue that this thing will go away? And so if you need to action it, like do it now. And a pattern that I've been sort of exploring is if you think about a toast component, on my toast components, I add a little X button on it. I'm working on a new design system, and I've kind of got this idea that any layering component should have an explicit way to close that layer, as well as like escape, but actually a physical button that you can click to say like go away. And so on toast, there's a little button that says like go away, don't need you anymore. So on that button on the toast, what I'm doing is I'm animating a little line around the outside. So it's got a plane going on top of me. So there's a line that grows and goes around the outside of the border of that close button. And then once that border kind of reaches the 12 o'clock position again, it goes all the way around, then it auto dismisses. I just think that's a really cool pattern because showing you kind of how much time there is to go. It looks a bit like a clock. It's starting at the top and kind of goes around. And it's also going around the close button, which I think is a nice cue that this is what will happen when this timer ends. Like it is going to close. Like this is the close button, timer's going around the close button. That's what's going to happen when this ends. So I think that seems to be quite a nice pattern. And what happens is if you hover over the toast, that line kind of quickly goes back to the top and turns green and then disappears. So it's sort of like the timer is restarting, because that's how my toast implementation works. When you mouse over the toast, that auto dismiss timer kind of is cleared, and when you leave the toast is when it kind of starts counting again. So when you go over the toast, that timer kind of unwinds and goes back. I think there's something there in that pattern, but more generally, I think it seems like a good idea to me to be clear about how long until this thing disappears. The trouble with that, though, is usually those things draw attention. So for me, at least, like movement on the page draws my eyes. And so if you have this sort of animation running around the outside of the button, it does draw the user's attention to that, which maybe that's a good thing. It forces them to sort of engage with that a little bit more. But if your toast was just like page created kind of toast, do you really need, firstly, you may not need a toast for that, but do you really need to draw attention to the close button? It feels like it's being quite demanding. I generally don't like it when interfaces pull my attention to things that maybe I don't really care about. So yeah, I'm not sure what the best thing is there. It's super common just for it just to disappear, auto dismissed elements. But I am thinking about what is a nice visual cue that this thing can hide. Will auto dismiss, but also doesn't draw too much attention to itself either. That's sort of that middle ground I'm trying to find. And for now, having a line going around the border of the X button, I think that's a nice balance. I don't think I have the colors right yet. I think they're a bit too loud. I think I might try and just tone them down a bit so it's a little more subtle, so it doesn't draw too much attention to itself. But I think that's sort of a nice middle ground. Anyway, that's just a little idea I've been exploring. I hope you're having a great day. I'll speak to you next time. Bye.